Hey, this is Shaun with the Atlanta Tennis Podcast, powered by Go Tennis. Check out our
This
calendar of
is
Metro
Shaun
Atlanta
with the
tennis
Atlanta Tennis
events at
Podcast, powered by Go Tennis.
letsgotennis.com.
Check out our
This
calendar
is
of Metro
Shaun
Atlanta
with the Atlanta Tennis
Podcast,
Podcast,
powered
Go
by
Tennis
Go Tennis.
.com.
Check out our calendar of Metro Atlanta Tennis Podcast.
All kinds of me in my head. Sorry, let me start that over. For those of you live, just pretend that didn't happen. Hey, this is Shaun with the Atlanta Tennis Podcast, powered by Go Tennis. Check out our calendar of Metro Atlanta tennis events at letsgotennis.com. And also, if you are considering having a look at improving your mental performance as an athlete, go to letsgotennis.com/deals and grab 20% off the Tennis Confidence Program or anything else on the Peak Performance site. This is Mental Training for Peak Performance with Dr. Patrick Cohn, and today we are going to share the one mental skill that all athletes must have. But first, we always have to do that, right? But first, before I tell you the thing that you actually need, Doc, can you give us a definition of mental skill versus any other skill, and then give me a couple of examples of a mental skill?
Sure. So a mental skill in the world of sports psychology and mental coaching is something that will improve your performance essentially. And when we talk about mental skills, we're typically talking about things like how to focus your best on court, how to improve your confidence, how to manage your emotions. We call that composure. So basically, composure is a mental skill. Proactive confidence is a mental skill. Those are examples of mental skills that we teach that all athletes could use.
All athletes, I love that. All competitors, even, as you guys would use in that world, whether you're an athletic competition or just a chess competition, or is this something I can use as a singer when I'm on stage? I mean, this is anything competitive or anything performance related, right?
Anything performance related, absolutely, yes.
So in that case, we've got mental skills, which are different from the athletic skills, which some athletic skills could improve my performance, of course, but the mental skill actually improves my physical performance. Is that kind of one improves the other, but my physical performance, could it go backwards? Could my physical performance improve, like make me feel better about myself even?
Well, how we look at it is you're only as good as your weakest link,
Okay.
right? So if it's your mental game, it's your mental skills that's the weakest link. That's something that you want to address. But no, to answer your question, it doesn't go that way. But however, when you're performing well, then certainly you can get momentum from that. When you feel like you're on fire or you feel like you're doing really well, you can get momentum, which is somewhat of a mental skill in and of itself.
And I think that the confidence that I get from playing well alone is different from the confidence that I'm going to build working on my tennis confidence. You said proactive confidence. Is that a specific type of confidence?
Correct. Proactive confidence.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So those are some examples of a mental skill. Now, if there is one skill to rule them all, if there is one thing an athlete needs, the main thing that we need, now granted, there are lots of them. Maybe I'm good at one, maybe I'm good at another, and I need to work on that, as you say, the weakest link. Putting air in the tire that doesn't need air doesn't necessarily help me, right? So in this case, what is that one skill? I want to talk about it early, and then we'll talk about it further. What is that one skill that any competitor is going to need?
Focus. Competitors need to focus, and there's so many distractions in today's world, whether it's around you, for juniors, it's in the stands, maybe their parents, maybe it's coaches, maybe it's the wind. So that can be a distraction in and of itself out there, playing in the wind. But then you have all sorts of internal gremlins and internal distractions going on. And so that's why focus is extremely important for tennis players and really all athletes.
And so if I were to say I want to better my focus, focus is the positive way to say it. Some people like the negative thing. What are the things that I'm blocking out? What are the things that I'm not doing to help me focus? Avoiding my parents, outside the fence. I'm ignoring the conditions. What are some of those things to define it the other way?
What you're saying is you're distracted.
Oh, very much so. I'm very distracted. That is part of my problem.
Yes. You're not focused on the process, or what we call, you're not focused in the moment. You're thinking too much about the results or thinking about that last shot. So that also goes into focus. So basically, focus is staying immersed into the present moment and then being able to refocus when you do get distracted. So if you're thinking in the last point, then you're distracted. If you're thinking ahead about the next set, or you're worrying about the outcome, or really if a partner's going to be upset if you lose, all of those are distractions, but also fears. We can say some of those are fears too. But so there's the internal, there's the external, there's future thinking, there's past thinking, there's random distractions, there's all sorts of stuff going on for athletes that they have to manage.
So I love saying this, and it sounds like my wife was right, or is right, because when I asked her, what do you think the one mental skill is that competitors are going to need? And she said the ability to think about the point that you're playing currently, the ability to think about the thing you're doing right now, not the last one and not the next one. That was one of the things you mentioned. Is that part of my focus? Is we call it being in the moment, but that's sometimes just, so we talk about being in the flow or in the zone. That might just be more of a scenario that's continual, where being in the moment appears to make my wife right, as I love to say out loud.
Well, there's a crossover there. You have to be immersed into the moment to really get into the flow or get into a zone state. The goal really isn't to get into a zone state, but in this case, the goal is to definitely immerse yourself into the present moment, which sounds easy, but it's a lot harder to do. I mean, then we just say, hey, you got to stay in the moment. Very more difficult to do when you got all those internal and external distractions going on.
Yeah, I can imagine just thinking about the concept of meditation, even of trying to think about nothing, which is surprisingly difficult for anybody, to be able to just clear your mind. Because what we do there is we put something physically, almost physically, theoretically physically in your mind to focus on, to block out any other thing. And this is part of that routine we talk about when I have my serve routine and the Nadal, the things that he does, he's probably physically feeling the sweat as he does it. So he's not thinking about the last point or the next point. Is that kind of what that is in being in the moment?
Definitely routines do help you stay in the moment. Yeah. When does it become a ritual versus a routine, or when does it become a superstition versus a routine?
When you're a baseball player, that's when it becomes a superstition, right?
Yeah. If you're Nadal, maybe. I don't know. A lot of people made fun of Nadal and his little routines that he does, but yeah, so it's certainly part of the focus package is to have a routine to get you locked in and prepared for that point, whether you're on the server side or whether you return a serve. You definitely want a routine, and that's what focus is all about. It's knowing what to focus on when.
In a positive way, to have that one thing or those things to think about, as opposed to trying not to think about the other thing. Where my father always told me, the thing you don't say is don't double fault. You want to find something positive to say about making the serve or hit it, get it in the box, at least something positive.
Well, yeah, something useful.
Useful, there we go.
But if I'm dwelling on the last point, and then I can't really plan my next serve. So if I'm just beating myself up, dwelling on missing one in the bottom of the net, then I'm not going to be able to think about the serve and visualize the serve and get into all those smaller things that are going to help me prepare for the serve, both mentally and physically.
And if we believe at all in that visualization scenario, we want the positive visualization, because if I'm remembering my double fault from the last point, I can only imagine I'm just manifesting the next one in front of me, right?
Yeah. I try to stay away from the word positive because it's just so nebulous and it's so broad. But I would say you're trying to visualize the serve that you want. Absolutely. Yeah, that's part of it. You're trying to visualize the serve going to the target. If you want to call that positive, yeah, certainly. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have another conversation about positive being broad because I definitely want to jump into that at some point. All right, so last thing, can you help me with my distraction ability, my ability to focus and stay inside the fences, stay inside myself, but not too much inside myself? Are there a couple of tips you can give me to say, here's how you focus? I think one of them might be trust the routine. Probably a lot of the things you've given us before, right?
I don't know, Shaun, you might be too far gone
It is possible.
for me to help you. So and it all flows together. First of all, you want to define what are those cues you need to focus on. I call it the planning, programming, setup, the trusting cues, all those things that you need to do. And it's based upon, it starts with the planning stage. So you plan your serve. Am I going to go out wide, down the center, into the body, if you've got that ability, and then you're going to visualize that serve. You're going to program yourself with the visualization of the type of serve. Maybe it's a slice serve out wide, for example. You're going to see that. So that's part of the focus and part of the routine. So it makes up both. Then your setup, which players can do in their sleep. Maybe a ball bounce setup, focusing on the target and going ahead and going up for the ball, making a good swing. But for us, that comes from trust. So we would call those the cues in the routine that help you stay locked into step by step preparing for that serve. Now that may be a little bit too complicated for some people, but eventually that whole thing is just one long behavior. It's just one long behavior, and it's not, you don't really break it down into steps per se.
Yeah, you say cues, and I think bullet points, and I think of the script, and I think of the thing that I have already written down ahead of me. If I'm reading the script, I'm not thinking about the last thing we said or the next thing we're about to say. I have that plan. As you said previously, have a plan for your serve. I think maybe those bullet points you call the cues might be those memory spots to sticking with the script and the thing you're walking into. Is that a good way to think about it?
Yeah, I wouldn't use the term script, but
Okay.
we'll go with that.
As an analogy?
Once again, it's routine.
Right.
It's the cues help you execute the routine that's going to help you prepare for the serve or return a serve.
Got it. Stick
And
with
then
the
if
routine.
you start to talk about during the point, those are different cues altogether. That's timing your split step, for example. That's getting back to the center of the court after a wide ball. That's getting to the ball quickly, thinking about quickly, seeing the target you want to hit to. So there's a whole new set of cues for ground strokes. There's a whole nother set of cues for volley and overhead, of course. And we didn't even talk about the return. Return has its own set of cues that you would want to focus on that help keep you locked in the moment, right? So one ball at a time. One ball at a time is where you want to be. You hear players talk about 1 point at a time, but it's really one ball at a time.
One ball at a time. That's even further broken down to say, yeah, I'm really in the moment if I'm playing one ball at a time.
Yes, we're going to break it down for you, Shaun. We're going to get down to the nitty gritty.
I'm going to be a better tennis player someday, I promise. Doc, I appreciate it. This has been mental training for peak performance. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
All right, thanks, Shaun.